Hello and welcome back. I have my expansion palette with me at the moment that I also call my playground palette because I want to talk about how this has been changing my art practice since I started using it. For those who aren't aware about what this is and why it exists or anything, I do have videos on it already, but to give you a condensed version, or as condensed as I can, I curated my palette system towards the start of this year to narrow down my art supplies, specifically my watercolor supplies, so that it was limited and practical and purposeful, but also factored in the things that I really enjoy and also allowed for some room to experiment and have some variety. And for that reason, I ended up coming up with a system of 3 palettes. So I have a main palette, an expansion palette, this palette, and a travel palette. The travel palette's only purpose, which is this here, its only purpose is being small. The actual pigments inside it are found either on this palette or on the main palette. The main palette, its purpose is my comfort zone. All of these pigments you see on here are pigments I know really well. I know how they interact with each other. I've used them for years, and it's where I go to just paint. I can paint anything using that combination of pigments, and it is my happy place. But I also wanted to have a place for all of my other pigments and also for variety and experimenting. So this palette here serves 3 purposes. The first, as I mentioned, was it's the place to house the rest of my pigments. One of the things I noticed is that I'm quite of an out of sight, out of mind person, and for that reason I decided that it would be a good idea to make sure that my entire watercolor collection is in these 2 palettes. If I have these 2 palettes open on my desk, I can see every colour I own, and I'd keep every colour I own within that limitation. And by providing myself with that limitation, I have a boundary. But within that boundary, I still had a lot of room to experiment and play. So this palette serves the purpose of, again, housing the rest of the pigments so I can see them. They're in my visual field, and that has been helpful because now I use pigments like this here, which is PG50. This is Cobalt Turquoise Light by Winsor and, if I don't drop it, by Winsor and Newton. And I've been using this in more paintings because it is visually here for me to see. And for that reason, I actually remember it exists and things like that. So having a small system, just 2 palettes I can get out and see, has been really, really helpful to me. Another thing is that variety and ability to experiment. So this is the place I go, much like with the main palette being the place I go to for comfort. I know for this palette that if I'm ever feeling stuck in a rut or I just really want to try something different, I can go here because I have pigments and paints here that I use less frequently. So this is a place I can go when I'm feeling like that. It's also a place I can go to experiment and learn new things. So this has become, like I mentioned, a playground for me as well. That's why I've kind of been calling it a playground palette as much as I've been calling it an expansion palette recently. When it comes to my studying this year, one of the things that I have been prioritizing has been learning about new pigments when it comes to certain areas of the color wheel that I feel I have less experience with. Some of those areas are warm yellows, middle reds and warm reds, but mainly middle reds, and then cool reds. So kind of cool red to warm yellow basically has been an area that I've wanted to learn more about, and a little bit of your red violets as well. So this palette has been the place I've been going to study, to learn new pigments, to expand my watercolor painting knowledge and pigment knowledge. But again, within that boundary of I can only experiment with as much space as I have. And that has been helpful for me and how I work as a human being. So far, I would say that this has been working out for me. I feel like I have enough room for variety and for learning about new pigments, but without overwhelming myself with too many. I feel like I've balanced that ability to have variety, but with like a soft boundary around it. So that's been working out really well for me. Another one of my goals this year, and this is relevant, has been trying to figure out an alternative to this discontinued colour here. This is the discontinued PO-71 from before 2019. I've done a couple videos on it recently. I've been trying to find an alternative to this because I am gradually running out of the last of my remaining tube. So I only have it for so much longer. And while I still have it, I've been trying to find an alternative to it. So these two palettes have been playing a role in that. And I've been using some of these paints to try and find a hue to replace the transparent Pearl Orange that I really, really like, the discontinued one specifically. And that is why this is here. So this is kind of an anomaly to the palette situation. This was sent to me by my friend Heidi. This is PO-107 by Winsor & Newton, if the camera wants to focus. And this is what they call transparent orange. When you look up transparent orange, they don't actually tell you what the pigment is, but the pigment number is PO-107. It isn't as red as the original transparent Pearl Orange by Daniel Smith, but in experiments, I've been able to make a hue with this that's getting pretty close. But the reason why this is on this palette is actually going to segue me into how this has been useful for me in changing my watercolor palette, not watercolor palette, my watercolor process. So these slanted wells can be removed. I really like slanted wells. You could very easily do this system with pans, but the entire reason why this system is set up the way it is because I like slanted wells. I have found that the more I've been using this system, the more I have been changing how I paint. So what I end up doing is I'll get out both of my palettes and I'll look at all of my pigments and I will figure out a selected limited palette for a painting based on what is available to me across my entire collection. And so I might be like, okay, what I want to do is I want to use Inden Throne, which is on the main palette, but I want to pair it with PO-62. And I'll bring that out. And then I'll be like, right, okay, today I'm experimenting with using PR-122 instead of PV-19. And that will do for the painting I want to do today. And I will take these two out and I'll rest them on my palette, usually on my palette, or it can be next to the palette. And then that means that I've essentially expanded my main palette for the painting I'm working on. So that's been a big change to my painting system, and that's all that this is doing at the moment. This, as I said, was sent to me as a way for me to try this pigment. Once this has been used up, I'll end up repurposing this pan for someone else and spread the joy, spread the love and everything. Similar thing with these. Once I use up a pigment that I say I've used up the entire tube and I figure out I don't like it, I don't want to continue using it or whatever reason, or it served its purpose, then this slanted well is now going to be free for me to try a new colour. So I'm not, even though I've filled up the palette that I've been using already, as you can see, all of these slots are filled. I've reached the limitation, right? I can still, the house of this is here actually. Boop. That's where that lives temporarily. Once I use up a pigment, I can end up replacing it with a new colour, and that's another reason why the ability to move these around is so useful to me. A big draw to the Holbein 24 palette, which is what this is. The Holbein watercolour palette, 24 wells. There is a 30 well version of this as well. Haha. A big draw of this to me is being able to move them around. So as I mentioned, I can take this out and then expand my main palette, but it means that if I use up one of these paints, so if I use up, this is PR178, if I use up this pigment and I don't want to use it anymore, I don't want to buy a new one, I mean, I've used it up, the tube's empty, I don't want to buy this one anymore, then I can get a new pigment and it might be a green, and I don't want to put a green in there. So I can move around all of these so that there's a free spot down here for me to put it would actually be here, to put the green in. So for a place where I am going to be experimenting with pigments and pigments are going to be changing in and out, being able to move these around is really useful for me. Now, yes, this system would perfectly work well for people who use just pans that they can click in and out. But like I mentioned, when it comes to my personal preferences, I prefer using slanted wells. It's just how I prefer to paint. And if I'm going to curate my system down and especially only use a couple palettes, I want them to be palettes that I really love using, right? So for that reason, this system has been designed for me. It's not going to be preferable for every other person because my preferences aren't going to meet everyone else's preferences. So one of the big things I always try to say on this channel is I try to encourage people to try to figure out what they prefer. And rather than me saying like, oh, you should get this because I really enjoy it, what I'm actually trying to tell people is try to figure out what you like. I show you what I like, in part to spread the joy, because you know it's just good talking about art supplies and being happy about them. But it is also to just show you how beneficial it can be to try and figure out what you like and how it can end up affecting your practice. So as I mentioned a few times in this video, this has been working out really, really well for me so far. It's changed my art practice in that I now use more pigments than I used to because I can just only use my main palette and then take out colours from here and expand the main palette. I can see all the colours I have. I can experiment with new colours. As you can see, I still paint in here. Sometimes when I just want a completely fresh experience and I don't want to be in my comfort zone at all, I will only use this palette. So the puddles you see all in here are from me doing paintings where this is the only palette I use and I don't use the pigments that I'm really used to. So this has been all the theories I had at the start of the year about what I thought would work for me. So far, everything has come true, which is very good. That's what you want to happen. But on top of that, some things that I didn't realize would happen have happened as well, which is also really fun to see. All the things you don't expect, the happy accidents, right? And one of those things has been the ability to essentially just expand my main palette temporarily. And yeah, that has been really, really fun for me. When it comes to this pan here, like I mentioned, this is a temporary help. And I've been really enjoying this pigment, so probably when I use up one of these, maybe I might get this anyway, even if this doesn't work out as a hue replacement for that PR71. I have really been enjoying this. I've been doing a painting with this. I'm actually going to put it back in my main palette. I've been doing a painting with this, and it makes a really, really lovely neutral with Indanthrone, which is what some of these puddles are, but this has more Indanthrone in it. When you use the right amount of Indanthrone to this, it starts to become like a really neutral black, and it is gorgeous. So that has been really fun to discover by being able to play around with this. But before I end up ranting too much more about about pigments and things, I suppose I'll just talk about the build quality of this palette. So as I've gone over all of the personal preferences and things like that, here's some practical things about this palette after I've used it for a while. This stains really, really easily. You can even see where some yellow and blue has stained from mixing with colours. So there's some yellow and blue here. The actual wells have stained really easily. You can see the blue there. That's fine, that's quite normal for plastic palettes. I personally don't mind it. It bothers some people, so that's why I'm mentioning it. Another thing is that these have been holding up really, really well. None of them have gotten stuck too much. None of them have got too loose. Again, I can very confidently turn this palette upside down and that row doesn't come loose. Turn it this way around and the other row doesn't come loose. This doesn't come undone. It rattles because it's loose like this, but the actual mechanism isn't loose. It's also not too difficult to open either. It doesn't take too much effort. And it's a nice surface for putting stickers on it. So we have a peanut and we have a coconut. So I always have them with me. And with that, I hope that I have given you a little update on this palette, but if I did forget to mention anything that you might have a burning question about regarding this palette, the watercolor system, whatever it might be, let me know in the comments and share with me what your favourite palette is at the moment. I love hearing what other people find beneficial in their practice because, again, it's just nice hearing people excited and passionate about what they love. So let me know in the comments and I will see you next time. Bye!